Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. On a recent episode of The Drew Barrymore Show, the host, Drew Barrymore, asked her guest, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be Mamala to the country. She said the United States needs a hug and that it needs Harris to be the protector. Why did the comment send mainstream and social media into a frenzy? And why did it land so wrong? Up next on Another View, we talk with two of our roundtable pundits about why Mamala turned from a personal term of endearment to a racially and culturally insensitive trope. Stay tuned. Another View will be right back after this news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Before we get started, I have to give a huge shout out and congratulations to the 2024 graduating class of the Newport News Neighborhood Leadership Institute. Now, this is an institute that is run by the city, and it brings in citizens to learn all about how the city operates. They come up with ideas for the city. They actually put together a video promoting the institute itself and encouraging other neighbors to get involved, and it was great. There were 5 graduates: Stephen Ace Wallace, Tanisha Malcolm, Denise Reynolds, Tracy Evans, and Simon Mel Howard. I had the honor and privilege of teaching the communications courses the month of March. We spent 4 Wednesday nights together, 2 hours each night, to talk about communication skills. And last night, each of them got up and made a speech, and I was so proud. So thank you very much. And the other thing I'm super, super proud about is that Another View has been nominated not once, not twice, but 3 times for a Excel, the National Association of Black Journalists Salute to Excellence Awards. We are nominated in the news series for our show, The Confederate Statue Debate in Edenton. And we're up against a woman out of Charlotte, North Carolina, WFAE 90.7, and her story is the new International African American Museum. And then in the public affairs segment, we are actually up against ourselves. There are 2 nominations, and they're both Another View. Woo! So our show on natural hair, the Crown Act, and also race in higher education, how Virginia colleges have erased Black neighborhoods. So. Wow. There we go. I am so very, very excited. Lisa Godley, our producer, will be going out to Chicago later on this summer and coming home with some more brass.
I love it.
We love it. We love it. So it's the second Thursday of the month, which means it's time for the Another View Roundtable. Now, 2 of our pundits could not join us today. We miss you, Dawn Hester and Allison Moore, but never to fear. We're in great hands with relationship expert, podcaster, author, and humanist, Dr. Alvian Lyons. Hi there.
Hey.
It's good to see you. And political consultant and president of the Hampton NAACP, Gayleen Knoyton. Hi, Gayleen.
Hello. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. So before we get into our main topic, which I teased earlier, talking about Mamala, Gayleen, you are very active with the NAACP, not only in Hampton, but on statewide level. And you all have been active in terms of the response of Virginia to students protesting the Israel-Gaza war. So you want to talk a little bit about what's going on and
Right. So our state conference hasn't officially come out with a statement yet, so I'm going to speak on behalf of Gayleen.
Okay.
So the concern with the students is that they have followed all of the rules. They have filed for their permit, and they have done everything they were supposed to do. They have not been rowdy or anything like that. However, they're being treated like Kent State 1970. But the police coming in, law and order. It was interesting that this past Saturday you had A.G. Mieres giving a speech at Regional University and talking about how students need to be civic engaged and have to be, proud of themselves and yada, yada, yada. And then students up at UVA were being arrested and being hounded by all these police officers with shields on and everything. It was more law enforcement than it was students. So this is truly, the Gaza and Israel issue is important. Trust me. But you got to look at the overarching of freedom of speech, and our students are doing the right thing. They're just exercising what they believe in, and they're not hurting anyone. But like any protest, you're going to have agitators. They're going to come in and disrupt, and it's going to make it look like it's the students. But overall, I'm proud of our students because they have been following the rules. They have done everything they were supposed to do. On UVA on Saturday, prior to Saturday, they had nothing in the policy saying you can't have encampments. However, that morning,
if I read correctly, they allowed for recreational tenting.
Right.
You were supposed to get permitting, and there was also allowance for recreational tenting.
Right.
But then they changed it.
Saturday morning. They
yeah.
uploaded a new document on Saturday morning, which is all over social media, so it's not a secret. And you just can't teach our children, our students and our leaders, because they're not our future leaders, they're our right now leaders. They're not going to stand for it. And that's why I'm proud of them speaking up, and they're getting support from all over. But you'll hear more from the NAACP because this is really a big issue.
It's interesting because we had Dr. Eric LaVille on the show last week, and we were talking about the conflict, and we were talking about the protests and so forth. And I was listing all of the Virginia schools that had active protests, and we were commenting on the fact that none of them were HBCUs. And Eric talked about the relationship from the civil rights perspective between Jewish people and African American people, but that there was more of a disconnect in terms of Israel versus Black people.
And I know the distinction that he's making because that's the conversation that's also about, to be able to be pro Israel or pro-Jewish faith and understanding the distinction between those two. You can disagree with the policy or the procedure or the operations of a nation and still be supportive of its people. They are not one and the same, and the uniqueness and the nuance that exists inside of that is lost in sort of the agenda of the pitting one against the other. And because historically the Jewish community was responsible for a lot of the protection of slaves and the commitment around both the abolitionist movements and the civil rights era, when you put those two things together, there is a history of understanding that exists. And if there were any community, so to speak, that would understand the experiences of Black people in America through slavery,
in America,
Jewish community understood that the best. And that is not, I want to be careful about the idea that it's a monolith, that you can just look at one entity or one individual and they speak for all. Just like Black people are not a monolith. We don't all agree with each other. We don't all have the same perspective. We don't have the same worldview. The same thing is true in every other culture. But there is a historic bond that has existed because we have come the closest to the experiences, the traumas, and the toxic dynamics that have existed inside of American history.
So, and let me just say this, and it was the Jewish community that actually helped fund the NAACP when it first started, and get us to the judge to be able to have us become an organization. However, in this situation, it's not a pick a side situation because it's on both sides, people are being hurt for this student protest. And there are black students that are protesting, on these campuses, PWI campuses. It's
Predominantly
just
white institutions.
right,
Go
white
ahead.
institution, right? I'm sorry, yeah. But there are black students but it's the moral issue with them as a whole, human issue with them as a whole, humanity. But it is the way that they're being treated. And this is not
So
just
you all are
here.
seeing this as beyond this particular instance.
Well, look what happened. Look what happened in New York. I mean, you can look at all the college campus across, and law and order is what a lot of the elected officials. Let me just say this: law and order, and I'm gonna say it because we're nonpartisan. But on the Republican side, they promote law and order. And that's what you're seeing on these campuses. So let's peel it back. And look at the whole climate of where we are in this country right now.
Yeah, I was reading an article from VPM, Virginia Public Media, and they did a story about UVA and so forth, and they were talking about the fact that there's a division within the elected officials, be it Republican or Democrat, in terms of how they feel about using police presence and so forth.
And there are
Anything else?
divisions that exist intra-party as well. And how we frame this conversation is also very important because many of the protests are anti-war protests. It's really not just about pro or anti-Israel
Israel
or Palestine. It's that the number of children and women and bodies that are being pulled out of rubble every day is the thing that is being protested. It is not to say that I am anti-Jewish or I am anti-Israel or I am pro-Palestine, and I am certainly not pro-Hamas, but it is to say that there is a sensitivity that individuals have to those of us who actually are pro-life in its full context. We don't want to see innocent life slaughtered over political and territorial ideologies and issues. There has got to be a way to protect the women and the children, if nothing else. And that's it. It is our modern day Vietnam protest. Is really what's happening.
That's really what it is.
But this generation does it a little differently. But that was the same thing that was said of the protesters of that generation.
The Kent State and so forth.
Correct.
So let me pivot a little bit because, and this conversation, I'm very excited to talk to the two of you in particular about this because I think that we're
shy.
Yeah, exactly.
So shy.
Shy, unassuming.
Okay, so let me
wallflowers.
put this in context, and then we're going to actually play the clip.
Okay.
So this was a Drew Barrymore show. For those of you who only watch PBS, there's another talk show out there. Drew Barrymore, who was a child actress, and now she's a talk show host. She had Vice President Kamala Harris on the show. During the conversation, it was a very casual conversation, and during the conversation, the Vice President Harris talked about her relationship with her stepchildren. They call her Mamala. They combined Mom and Kamala and created Mamala. And she was talking about how adults need to be grown up in these situations, and because it's all about the children. Drew Barrymore then took it to the next level.
I keep thinking in my head that we all need a mom. I've been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now. Yeah. But in our country, we need you to be Mamala of the country. And as a woman who respects so much and wants to share and wants to be confident and has no ounce of me that has competitiveness. Yeah. When we lift each other up, we all rise.
That's exactly right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
However, we need a great protector.
Now, in no way do I think that Drew Barrymore was being mean or racist or anything like that. However, do you think this is an issue of the lack of cultural competency when you ask the Vice President of the United States, who happens to be Black and Asian, and again, that whole idea of Black women having to be the protector of everything? Alvian, I think you have a different perspective.
I do because I understand what it's like to step into other cultures and not understand the magnitude of the statement that you're making, right? I do. I think about, I am a culture inside of a culture. We've talked about that before, right? I'm a child of immigrants in the United States. I am first generation American. What was acceptable and appropriate in my household was not the same when I stepped out of my household. So there were multiple times throughout my childhood, well into my adulthood, that I had a different truth, reality perspective that, when shared, hit or landed differently for the other person. And I am sensitive to the difference between intent and impact. I can know what my intention is and still not realize the magnitude of my impact, right? And I think that on some level, that is what happened inside of this exchange. However, I want to be clear to Drew's defense on some level. I watched all of the clips because I wanted to make sure that we are not having a conversation in which we're looking at a paragraph and it was a novel.
Right.
Because
right.
if we take out the paragraph
point.
from the novel, we can make it say whatever we want it to say, right? But because of the nature of the exchange, and I pay attention to a lot of those, we all know I study human dynamics, right? There was a tone that Kamala set inside of the conversation that suggested we are two friends talking rather than you are talking to me, the VP of the United States of America. And when she leaned forward and chuckled about the kinds of friends we need to surround ourselves with, the kind that say, girl, you need a mint, okay? We've left this stereotypical power of the office that deserves honor and respect. Let me be crystal clear. But when you're trying to, if Drew does not have experience in stepping into a space like that, she may interpret the informality as to suggest mirror this level of conversation. And if she thought she was mirroring the VP in that casual nature, then when we're talking about stories of motherhood, and Drew's a mom, and if you've seen her on some other clips, she's talking about the dynamics of her and her daughters and trying to find that space between them. And so if she thought she was sliding into this moment where we share space as moms and as women, and then I say the mamala commentary, I'm not thinking about the fact that I'm sitting in front of the most powerful woman in the United States who holds an office that is historic in every way. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm sitting with another mommy. And the one thing that is true culturally and is in the article, if you're going to share a little bit of that from the research that's done by Dr. Gilliam, is that there's a familiarity and a breach of personal space that is very common in white culture, very common. And it's not meant to be offensive in any way. It's that when I love you, there are no boundaries.
There is no personal
Absolutely.
space.
My white friends will eat right out of my bowl. They'll drink from my straw. Like I might be done with that straw immediately thereafter. But I would be that way with anybody. To be clear, I don't do that barely with my own children. But it's to say I love you, and I don't see any space between us. So I think on some level there is a bit of that inside of the conversation, and we could come to the other things in a minute.
Right, and I'm going to play devil's advocate in a second, but I want to hear from you first, Gayleen.
What if the vice president was white? Would that comment have been made?
what do you mean when you say that, though?
I'm just saying that would she make the same comment that we need to have a protector or whatever, would that same comment have been made if the vice president was white? Well, let me just say this. Pertaining to the ramification of her statement, this is why Black history is so important. Because historically, it's always been the woman that's taking care of the family, way back, can endure all. Mm-hmm. But when she made the comments, we all will rise, we all must rise together. Well, Black women has not risen yet. Not when they're dying 3 to 4 times on the table with maternal health. Not when they're still dealing with the natural hair issue. Wages are not the same. They're not treated fairly even in the media. For her to even make a comment like that, and I agree, she didn't know. She wasn't thinking that she was doing anything wrong. Mm-hmm. I totally agree it was not sinister. Mm-hmm. I know that. Right. But I go back to saying this is why I believe Black history is important and it should be in schools. Because if you go back, we've always been known to be the Olivia Popes. Mm-hmm. We could come in and fix things, everything. Just, we're like super women. We can take all pain. We can do anything. We can come right in there. And I think that's the way she perceived as Kamala Harris is coming in to be able to fix things. I mean, she looked at, and the same thing with Michelle Obama. I probably think Michelle Obama was there. She probably with the same issue, the same thing with that. But we're always looked as being a fixers. We can come in and bring everybody together, and we have the strength to do that. But again, I go back to that's why Black history is important in our schools.
So, Alvin, let me ask you this, and I hear what you're saying, and I accept a lot of that on as you stated it, but. Would a Black woman be allowed to not recognize the vice president
in that kind of way?
In that kind of way.
Okay.
I mean, because I get you. I get it. If you set a tone, you and I have great conversations.
Yes,
you know. And when you set a tone like that, you can get wrapped up in it. However, I could get as wrapped up with another white woman as I wanted, but there's still a line. And so I guess my question to you is, do you think that it was okay for her to forget that there was that level
that there should have been a level of Well, I will say that as a person who struggled during the pandemic because I couldn't touch people, okay, like so, I'm naturally a forget the lines kind of personality, right? So I am empathetic to individuals who really just want to step into your skin and be as close to you as they possibly can. That is actually in my personality.
You just want to be there, human to human. It doesn't matter about anything else. The entire
world falls away and it's just the two of us. Okay. That is the nature of my personality. So I'm empathetic to people who have that in their personhood. I do agree that there is an honor that goes with the office that should have been present, particularly on camera. And the distinction that I make, and I think the mistake that Drew made, is the realization that there are things that we could do between the two of us off camera, even in our familiarity, that on camera you should be mindful of. I have so many people that I call friend that hold very high office. When we are on the phone, it is just, we are two people who put our pants on one leg at a time. But when I introduce them someplace or I am standing someplace, I still, unless they have said to me clearly, Al, I want you to talk about me the way that we are privately, because that has happened, because I want people to feel comfortable with me. So I need you to close that gap for me. Then I say, okay, then I will not call you such and such, your formal title. I will call you by your first name if that's what you want. But I ask for permission for that because of the fact that we should honor and respect an office like that.
You know, it reminds me, I remember when Another View was on television, and that was 2009, 2010. And we were talking about, President Obama had just gotten into office, and we were talking about it. And I mistakenly, and got called on it, called him Barack. On TV. Yeah, that was bad. It was bad. But, you know, and again, to that point of familiarity,
Yes.
because of the nature of the way that he carried himself, and the pride that we all had,
and that
because
he felt
of him,
like
and he
family.
felt like family. Exactly.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I did that, and the audience folks got on the phone. They
Don't
they
you
called,
ever
they
forget.
sent
Yep.
your email.
Yep.
Don't you ever forget.
Yep.
You know, and so and to your other point, when I was working with Prince George's County Police and Chief Melvin High, who used to be a police chief in Norfolk, he and I, behind closed doors,
Had a very good relationship.
Yep. And we could talk, and he was Mel.
Yep.
Okay. But as soon as one of those officers stepped in the office, he
It's
was Chief
Chief.
High, you
Yeah.
know? And so that's my issue with this is at what point do we have to demand on both sides that the office is respected, you know? And again, I don't think that she was being mean or
No.
deliberate,
in any
you know,
way.
in any way. I
In any way.
really think she was being sincere.
Yeah,
but
ignorance is bliss.
well, if you're just joining us, we're talking about Black women stereotypes with the Another View Roundtable pundits, Dr. Albion Lyons and Gayleen Knoyton. But 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What do you think about what Drew Barrymore said? And we're going to get into some of the other stereotypes about Black women, because again, and Alvin, I want you to talk about why stereotypes are so harmful.
Well, see, the thing is, and to Gayleen's point, which I 100% endorse, that we have to be teaching Black history in our schools. And to be honest, we should really just be teaching history, because the Black history in America is American history.
It is.
Absolutely.
But we separate it out as if it were a set aside, which is a whole other conversation.
Because
right?
it'll be left out otherwise.
Literally.
If you don't call it.
So the honesty of the fact that we aren't really fully teaching this, and we really don't teach human competence. I'm not even just talking about culture from a Black-white perspective, but that we lack a level of competence about the diversity in humans, period. When we talk about diversity in America, very often we're only talking about Black and white.
Exactly.
And
which
that
is
is
wrong.
not that's not diversity.
yeah,
That's a
exactly.
piece of diversity.
Exactly.
And then we treat it as if all Black people are the same.
Right.
Which is also disrespectful to the multi-dynamic nature and the various dimensions that make us who we are. So the problem with stereotypes is that when you don't have information, your stereotype becomes the truth. If we actually taught the history and we made sure that there was real information that is being shared accurately about who people are, who humans are, then the stereotypes wouldn't have the level of power they would, because it would be one thought against a million truths. But the problem is that it's one thought against three truths, that there's so little that is being taught that stereotype stands up as significantly as if it were a pillar of truth, because there's so little truth that is actually being taught.
Because there's a kernel within each of them, but the falsity around it goes way beyond what the kernel of truth is. So let's talk about a couple of them. Mammy, that's the first one. Since you brought up mammification before. So what is a mammy, for those who out there who don't understand?
Well, if you go back through historical times, she was the one who was the housekeeper, took care of the babies and did everything, you know, cleaned the house, took care of the babies, cooked for everybody. I mean, she was the mammy. You looked at the, that was the first actress, Black actress to win an award, because she was a mammy, right? And that's what she portrayed in all of the films. So when you look at it, some people would look at it as a form of endearment that don't know any better. But otherwise, it looks like that's all that you are. You are just the help. You know, and that's really what it is. You're just a help. You're a mammy, and you do whatever I say I want you to do, and you really have, you have no voice whatsoever. You're just supposed to follow instructions.
And also, the mammy figure was desexualized. She was obese. She was
dark skin.
Dark skin. She wore a rag on her head.
Like Aunt Jemima.
All those types
it
of
was the Aunt
Jemima thing.
But that was also because historically the mammy was also originated in the wet nurses that were the foundation of literally the birth of America.
Right.
And that is to say that in history, a lot of white women did not nurse their own children.
That's right.
They actually gave their children to the lactating black mother to nurse their child, only for when that child got older, for that child to be able to whip the same nurse that once they suckled from.
That's right.
And it's the complexity of all of those realities inside of America that is such that it's not what they refer to in psychology as tabula rasa, right? There's no blank slate when having a conversation in America about race. You are always painting on a canvas that already has color on it. And that is why there's a sensitivity to it, because you are not coming to a canvas that is completely empty of anything. There's a story that has already been written, and now our task is to be able to add to that image in such a way that what was once a tragic image can now be a beautiful tapestry because of what we're laying on top of it. But when you don't understand that there's already something painted there, you could find yourself in some really dangerous territory.
Very dangerous territory. Let's talk to Elizabeth from Williamsburg. Hi, Elizabeth. You on the air?
Hi. I love your program.
Thank you.
I am a 75-year-old white woman, and the comment about Drew Barrymore I don't think was meant to be disrespectful. Truthfully, I'm an older generation, but I see the color of your skin as being different, but you're a human being, and that's how I see you. My mother and father, my dad went to Tulane in New Orleans, and my mother told me about the awful things they saw down there in the 1940s. And so I was always brought up to not be prejudiced. And I really don't think she meant it to be disrespectful.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead. Go ahead,
That's
Alvin.
what we said.
Yeah, we agree with you, Elizabeth.
I agree that Elizabeth, I think that she speaks for Drew's sentiment and that it was not intentional. I think that one of the things that when people of color hear that I don't see your color, and know that the intent versus the impact, remember the issue is how well we close the gap, right? But the intention of the statement is to say that I love you for who you are. That's what white people mean when they say, I don't see color. That's what they're trying to say, right? The impact of that is for most people of color that in order for you to love me, you have to take me out of my skin in order to do so. So the idea is never that people of color don't want you to see our skin or our packaging because we perceive it as beautiful. The issue is that we don't want you to see different as deficient. So the goal is for us to see all of the beauty of the diversity, but what meaning are we ascribing to the different is the thing that we have to heal. And that's the gap between the intention and the impact. So your comment may mean one thing, but it may fall differently, and especially if you don't know.
Right, and I think that's the whole point of Drew's comment is, and why it fell the way that it did for some people, because there are a lot of white people who are really confused about why people
so
are upset about
it.
it.
But this gives an opportunity for a teaching moment. And that's the reason why we have these conversations.
Right.
Because if we don't say anything and we just be critical and not explain the why, then people don't know what they don't know. And that's why it's so important that, and I get the caller's point when she says, I don't see color, you're
just human.
You're just human. I get that. But, if you don't see color, but you have to see the struggles behind it. Behind that. It's not just, I just see you just who you are. Whatever.
Well, I mean, I think the other problem with the statement, even though it's meant well, is that we know it's not real.
Yeah. Right.
In that, if I walk out of this room and somebody says, where did Dr. Lyons go? and someone else says, well, she's out there in the crowd, and someone says, well, can you go find her? You would not have difficulty being able to describe what I look like, right? You would not say, I think she's Swiss, and she might have had blonde hair, and I think she could have been 6 feet tall. You would say she's brown skinned, right? With long black hair, and so which means that you see my color. Right? So the problem is that it rings insincere even though it's meant well, because we know you see our color, because I see yours. It's just that I love you in yours. Yeah. And I hope that you love me in mine.
I just oh, go ahead. We have another call. Let's see. Raphael is calling from Newport News. Hi. You're in the air.
Thank you for receiving my call. I was thinking, kind of play off on that. This country is, an experiment in democratic, representation, but also we have the evolution of from agriculture to technology. There's so many changes. I wonder if this nation is really open or willing to address the individuals. Instead of being black, white, having honor a person who is of Asian, West or East or other countries, Hispanic, whatever, because of the evolution of technologies and, the skill the person had today won't be there tomorrow, and there's this, fear of losing something. I wonder if the nation is really open to identifying a person as they are and not as, you need to feed our family kind of thing, and that fear aspect.
Okay. Thanks for the call, Raphael.
Let me just say this.
Go ahead.
The United States is a melting pot. Everyone is welcome here. That can come through here. It's a melting pot. So it's not just black or white, but you have to look at it. This country was built, first of all, the Indians were here first. Okay.
Native Americans.
Okay, the Native Americans was here first. The Native Americans were here first. And then this country was built on the backs of slaves, black people. And so that division was very strong when you look at who was in leadership at the time, which is white people, still white people in charge now. But anyway, we're getting there. But in terms of not being able to see, we see what other races, the struggles line up in some areas, in underrepresented areas. If you look at the black and brown community, it lines up. The Asian community is different. I mean, whatever. If you look at their structure and where they handle things, so everyone has their areas, their own pockets, is what I say. But we are a melting pot, and we don't discount other people that are
we
here.
a melting pot or are we a salad?
I think we're a salad.
I think we're a salad too.
We're a salad. Well, a salad.
Because,
salad. Yeah,
I agree with all salad. Together it tastes good.
Yep.
Yeah,
but they all have individual
flavors. Salad. I can go with salad. Yeah.
And if you ask me, it's sushi. But then go ahead.
Stephanie joins us from Suffolk. Hi, Stephanie. You're in the air.
Sushi.
Hi. I was just thinking that maybe part of the disconnect with Drew Barrymore and speaking with the quote-unquote vice president was the fact that she was raised in a celebrity society, and everybody's a big name, everybody's a big personality, and perhaps that was a disconnect for her as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're saying that the title of vice president, because she's used to being in Hollywood, she doesn't see the distinction between the
her
two.
Level and it could be a possibility. But here's a perfect example, right? So what is her? Stephanie? Okay. So I would imagine that Stephanie is a supporter of the show, which is the reason why she's listening to it, right? And we love Stephanie for the fact that she's a supporter of the show. But see, when Stephanie said, quote unquote, vice president, without the further context of Stephanie's statement, one could have interpreted her to be saying that the vice president is illegitimate inside of her role, because when we say quote unquote, typically in communication, we are saying that we are calling it this, but we question the veracity of the statement, right? But Stephanie wasn't trying to undermine the role of the vice president. She was just using common conversation. Well, quote unquote, that that's the title, and that this celebrity doesn't perceive it as a particular title.
Right.
And so she's just having conversation, but Stephanie might have been sitting in a room full of brown women, and poor thing, by the time she walked out the room and came back, everybody left the table. And she didn't even realize what happened. And that's what I mean about the dynamics that exist and the nuances in communication that can send us in multiple directions.
And I agree with you, but Alvian, when does it get to the place? Because I feel like, or let me ask you guys if this is your experience.
Go ahead.
Then I'll put it that way. It's when will it get to a point where it's equitable in terms of both sides having to be very conscious of what they say and how they say it? Because I think that we give grace a lot to folks who don't look like us, who say things. Because the first thing we said was she wasn't being malicious, and we're not, and we all agree with that. However, if the tables were turned, we would not get away with it. I don't think. What do you think?
So here's what I will say. I will say that what if we don't know that very often when we speak as people of color, that we are offending our white counterparts. But because we are not our white counterpart, we don't even realize what is being said when we leave the room.
But my point is, they say it to us before we leave the room.
Most not.
You think so? Really?
No, because, and the reason I know that very often they don't say it to you before you leave the room is because two things are true. One, I have white family members, right? Okay. So my white family members tell me what happens after the black people leave the room.
Okay.
Because my white family members are often assumed to not have black spouses. So they assume at this level, this man would not be married to a black woman. So when he's making this kind of money at this kind of level, of course his wife is some blonde-haired trophy woman. But no, his wife is my sister, right? Or my cousin or my niece, right? So there are conversations that are had with the assumption that we are a homogenous group with common and shared experience, and we all go home to our white spouses. And so that conversation that transpires there when we are not in the room is different than the conversation when we're in the room. So I know they don't all say it to our faces, but I will say that you can develop the kinds of relationships cross-culturally, because some of my best friends are listening right now, cross-culturally, where you can say to each other safely what it is that would happen only in homogenous spaces. But that is where real relationship exists. The problem in America is most of us don't have real relationships. We are so good at doing the superficial. And to Raphael, I think was his name, his commentary, though I think that it was a little broader than the conversation we were having, but thank you for listening anyway. When he brought up technology, I think that technology has been it just exponentially increased the gap between sincere connection in humans. And as a result, if we don't intentionally and purposefully choose, because it's a choice, you don't have to, but choose to close that human gap, we are going to find ourselves in places that America has never even seen before. And that's not for fear mongering. It's just human behavior. The larger the gaps become, the easier it is to not value your life. So we have to intentionally close these gaps.
And when conversations such as what happened with Ms. Barrymore continue to happen, that continues to, even if it's just a little bit, push that gap even wider.
If we don't talk about it.
Which is why we're talking about it.
Which is why we talk about
exactly,
it, because this show heals.
Because we're trying to help people understand and to think about these things so that...
In safe space.
Exactly.
Honest and safe space to talk about what we're really thinking and what we're really feeling, which is what makes this show so powerful.
Thank you. Let's see. Nate joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Nate. You're in the air.
Hey, just mirroring what was just said, I'm a 56-year-old white guy, and the way that, and I don't even know your name, I literally just was grabbing food and turned on the radio and heard the explanation of, we do see color, but and everything else that was described after that, that's the best way I've ever heard that described.
That was Dr. Alvian Lyons.
Dr. Alvian Lyons.
Hi, Nate.
I've never heard it described that way, and I think that's absolutely perfect. I think that ought to be the discussion. That ought to be a way that we can talk about this more, because I do see color, but I judge based on the person,
right.
And that's all I wanted.
Right.
See,
the
there you go.
honesty.
And
thank you for saying
that, Nate.
And thank you for saying I do see color.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really appreciate that.
And
Absolutely.
even going further and saying, and I judge
based on the person.
And that is honest.
But because that whole idea of I don't see color really
rings hollow,
and it erases a person.
Yeah.
You know. So that's just kind of interesting. Let's see. Let's talk to Julia in Chesapeake. Hi, Julia. You're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just calling to say that I'm from another country. I'm from Latin America, and I'm a white person, and I can't put that I'm white in any forms. So I just think it's very interesting and odd that American people tend to say black and white just when it pertains to Americans. Like it sounds like sometimes that no one from another country can be black or white. They're either Latino or they're Asian or they're this.
Oh.
And it's just odd to me coming from another culture that distinction is always made. Even in official forms, I can't put down that I'm white. I have to put down that I'm a Latina. So.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting. It
Isn't
is.
it?
It's
but
very
but if you think about it, the same thing is
Julia.
true when you come from Africa.
Yes.
Because when you say South African, people assume naturally black.
That you're black.
But
and
no.
There's a whole lot of people in South
right, that's
Africa
how
that are not.
apartheid was possible,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So it is true. I also have always found it interesting in the United States how, when President Obama became President Obama, and those that we'll just call it a 10% of America, perhaps, that might have issue with color. Okay, we're just going to call it 10%. So the 10% of America that was not thrilled that we had a black president. Yeah. We're going to be optimists. We're going to be a community of optimists. Okay, so the 10% of America that wasn't thrilled about it, I was so tickled by it because I was like, if you don't want to vote for his black side, vote for his white side. But what's interesting in America is that blackness is so significant that it will erase whiteness to white people. Yeah. So I find that very interesting.
Well, that goes back to the drop of blood.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the whole thing.
That it's no longer pure anymore.
Right.
But what is pure? Really, this is America. Nothing is pure.
So we got 6 minutes. Gosh, I tell you,
it gets so juicy.
The one drop. Oh, Lisa said, explain the one drop rule.
Okay, go ahead. You want to go historically?
No, go ahead.
Or Gayleen, do you want to talk about it historically? Go ahead, Gayleen.
The one drop rule is that when you have two white people that have a baby, no, I'm sorry, when a black woman and a white man say they have a baby or vice versa, that baby is not white. It's the one drop rule. Is what they're considered black.
Any blood that is mixing
together,
that is black
exactly.
with white
dilutes the whiteness.
Dilutes the whiteness.
That's exactly right, regardless of what it is.
Right.
Who it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's get to one more stereotype because we had a bunch. But let's talk about the angry black woman, because really, if you look at her,
we could do a whole show on that.
I know.
That's another show.
But if you look at her, she is a continuation of Sapphire. Would you agree with that or not?
I mean, the angry black woman thing is probably, I would have to say, of all of the tropes, is the worst one that we navigate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The worst, hands down. Mm-hmm. So much so that many of us women of color are actually bothered by, some as far as offended by, the comment that we're so strong. And the we're so strong is part of this orientation that we are aggressive and we feel nothing. We can go through anything, and you could leave us, you can abandon us, you can step on us, you can violate us, you can do anything to us,
and we're still
going to survive.
We still
Which
rise.
is why the mortality issue that Gayleen referenced before is a real issue in healthcare, because we are perceived to be not even human with the level of pain we can handle, that we don't even get proper pain management inside of the hospitals. So there are all kinds of things that are very real that also connect to you asking the question, why are stereotypes so dangerous? Because if you don't understand truth, you will treat the stereotype as the truth. And now this perfectly strong, bionic black woman doesn't need care. When she screams in pain, she doesn't need response. When she cries, she's overreacting. When her babies die, it's just like the puppies. It's no big deal. She should be able to calmly talk about this in front of the cameras.
And I would even say it's not like the puppies, because
they
the
love
puppies,
the puppies.
That's right.
You're right.
Because the puppies get more attention. Go ahead, Kaylee.
That's exactly right. But let's just take it a step further. You know, I don't like it when men call women bossy. I always say that women they say, I got bossy sisters, or my mom's bossy. No, they got great leadership skills.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
We say, my little girl is bossy. No, she has great leadership skills.
Your little girl's a future CEO.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That's what she is. And
so I'm just trying to widen the conversation.
Amen.
You know?
I'm for it. I am for it.
So one of the other ones that we had talked about in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So the welfare queen, which Ronald Reagan was the one who put that one together. I was listening to this. So he says there's a woman in Chicago. He said, this is Ronald Reagan. She has 80 names, 30 addresses, 12 Social Security cards, and is collecting veterans benefits on 4 non-existing deceased husbands. And she's collecting Social Security on her card. She's got Medicaid, getting food stamps, collecting welfare. Under each of her names, her tax-free cash alone is over $150,000. That's what he put out there.
Well, for the record, because I worked in human services, nobody was making $150,000.
No,
okay?
No.
And let me be clear, people with 5-6 children pre-COVID were only getting $600 and something worth of cash benefit, right?
That's right.
So all of this is written a particular way in order to create a particular idea, concept, or narrative of a people that you want to marginalize. But if we actually look at the data, we have more in rural white areas of individuals who are on what is referred to as welfare. That does not exist anymore.
Right.
It's now, TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, depending upon what states you're in. But point being that we don't care about the facts if the facts don't fund, don't forward, don't promote the narrative we want, right? That's when we choose alternative facts, right?
And that's what we did.
So
that's what he did.
Does that mean it's a lie?
No, so it's not that you're lying. You're just an active participant in the campaign for misinformation broadly.
Okay. All right.
There you go. You ladies, I could talk to you all afternoon. Thank you so very, very much. And we will continue this conversation next month, or a different conversation. Who knows? Because we never know what's coming up. But we are always ready to deal with it. That is Dr. Alvian Lyons, Gayleen Knoyton. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for spending an hour of your life with us here on Another View. You can listen to this show again or any other Another View program at anotherviewradio.org, or you can go to Spotify or wherever you go to get your podcasts. And we want to take a moment to say Happy Mother's Day to all of the moms in our listening audience. And we want to especially acknowledge those who have lost their mothers. Just remember to always say her name, and she will always be in your heart. My mom is Ruby Eleanor White Ham, and I love you, Mom. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer. And Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Thanks so much for listening. And let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.